Good morning, everybody. This morning we're going to talk about email marketing, email newsletter best practices. And I'm using as an example an email that I recently received that I think has some really great use of some tools in email and just as a perfect example of what an email newsletter really should be. And then we'll cover some of the kind of the basics as well as so the basic mechanics behind the email as well as the content itself. So the first thing from any good email newsletter is the subject line of the email because that's what really determines if it gets opened and read, if it's something that grabs your attention and makes you want to read more, or if it's something you're just kind of like, well, so this one, I mean, this is an okay subject line. I don't think this is the best subject line that I've ever seen. Actually, the reason I picked this email is more for the content. But even still, something that's going to get you interested, especially if you're very interested in Apple Pay or using your mobile phone as a payment device. They're talking about the security of that, so that's something that's going to get your attention and you're going to want to read more about it. So it's certainly something very timely, and a lot of folks will be thinking about and be curious about. So there would be, pretty good chance that a good chunk of people are going to want to know more about this. A lot of people have iPhones. So, it doesn't have to be, an earth-shattering subject line, just something that really, in a nutshell, gives an idea of what's in the email. And then also, ideally something that's going to grab attention and pull us in and let us know what we're reading about. Some email programs, not all, also have the ability to do a little intro tagline. This particular one doesn't have it, but you might see it above the header of the email. And that intro tagline is what gets pulled in when you look in your email inbox. And if you're looking at what you see sometimes underneath here, that little short description, that's where that will show up. So that is another opportunity, again, to give a snippet of what you're going to be talking about and an opportunity, again, to draw readers in. So two kind of places there where it's really, I think, pretty short. So, the length of a tweet or the length of a social media post, so 140 characters or so, trying to get people's attention. You don't necessarily want to have a really long subject line. That's another thing that we see. And you do with your subject line want to avoid certain kind of spammy words like free or great value or coupon. Those tend to be more, as well as, kind of the X-rated things. Not that we would ever include that, but, that sort of thing. So those sorts of words that might trigger it as to be spam. So, try to keep it as non-sensational as possible, and that's going to help a lot as well with making it through the spam filters. The next thing, which this particular email actually doesn't do a good job of, is they do really recommend having it come from, and this is something Melissa Morris and I have talked, we've gone back and forth about quite a bit, is showing it from an actual person instead of a company, because that does tend to get a higher open rate because then it has a more personalized feel to it as well. So that's something to consider. But with like this, with Legal Shield, where they're a larger company, it may not make sense because again, you don't. It sort of depends on what your marketing strategy is. That's something we've talked a lot about, where we really don't want to have one person who is just the face of the business. We want it to be clear that it's the team. So by always having the email come from the same person, it sort of gives that impression. So that's where you have to weigh the pros and the cons there and decide what makes the most sense for your business. So that's the header stuff that you see there. Really, the most important part of the email is the body, which is what we're looking at here. One of the key pieces of that is having your company brand in there, so making sure that your logo is nice and big and clear so we immediately know who it's from. This is a great branding tool, if nothing else, getting in front of your customers on a regular basis. And so if you don't have your logo or something in there that clearly identifies who it's from, the company that it's from, you're not going to get that name recognition, which is one of the benefits of doing an email. So putting your logo in there somewhere prominent is nice. You can see here they have a very simple header with just the logo and the social media links, and I think that works really well. So it doesn't have to be really fancy, and everybody gets kind of hung up on, oh, we're going to give it a name, we're going to title our newsletter like we used to do with the old print newsletters, like our little gazettes and stuff. And I don't think that we necessarily need to, unless that's part of sort of your brand identity, you don't necessarily need to do that. It can really be very simple like this. To identify who you are. Again, a key piece, though, you see is having the social media links nice and prominent, so that it's easy for people to connect with you elsewhere. So again, really promoting the social media out there, and it's a great way to drive that social media following. If they like what they're seeing here, they can get more of the same type thing. In some cases, it can be just as simple as the links like you see here, or you may want to actually tell them what they're going to get by following you. And then, another link that is missing that you may want to consider depending on the strategy for your business is a link to your website to see more information or services about what you do. So one of the things that they talk about as a plus for email marketing, and I actually see it as not always being done really well, is customizing it. And you'll see this one doesn't have it at all. And what customization simply would be is we may see a line before this that starts out, hello, Jasmine, and then it goes in. And so it's really adding the person's name or trying to customize the email so it feels less like a mass mailing. That is, in my opinion, incredibly hard to do well without it coming off just feeling like, oh, they just shoved my name in the header and then the same kind of generic thing went off. So that's something that I think that you really have got to save for when you have a very clear sort of plan and sort of a unique way to do it, so it doesn't feel like it's just a few merged fields scrunched into some generic text. So in my opinion, unless you're really going to put the time and thought in to do it well, it's almost better to send the generic version, because otherwise it comes off feeling really stiff, more stiff and fake than if it's just a general email like what we see here. So that's something to consider in terms of personalization and how to do that. And you'll have different types of emails that you'll send out. Like I said, this is more newslettery, so it doesn't need to feel as personalized as, say, like if you're doing an offer, a follow-up offer on a purchase or something like that as well. So what I really like about this newsletter is they have got a lot of content in here, but it's presented in such a way, you'll see as I scroll, it's very clean, very well laid out, not at all busy, but still a lot of meat on it. And that's, the line we've got to walk with email newsletters is having them have enough information to really be meaty and something that I can read in my inbox, but also not so long that I have to stop and spend 5 minutes reading it. It really does need to be a pretty quick little snippet. So you'll see here, I love how they did the 2 intro articles side by side, really just a couple of paragraphs. But if you read what's there, there's definitely enough to wet my whistle, give me some usable information. And then they've got where you can click to actually read specific tips. So I think this is great. They're setting up, they're explaining what the issue is or the concern is here, and then they're doing, the click read more tips. So if you want the specific tips. So I think this is a great way to highlight an issue, get somebody interested in it. And if they care enough, they can read over, but at least they can be aware of the issue being there. So I think this is a really good mix of showing some meat, but without so little that you feel like it's frustrating, because that's one of the things that drive me nuts, and I hear that from a lot of people is, you'll see a lot of the blog style email newsletters. It's a picture, it's like one sentence, so it's enough to kind of pique your interest, but it's not enough to really make you want to click over and have to read another post. And a lot of people don't want to have to click out of their email, so that's where you've got to give them something usable here. And if they have the time and the wherewithal to decide, it's fine to give them that option, but you do need to give them enough here that they don't necessarily have to click over as well. One thing that I really like that they did with this email is the inclusion of this infographic, this image, which normally in emails you want to avoid having a large image in there, because, or having just the image, and so that's why the image with the text is so important, because a lot of email programs will hide images as a part of their spam prevention techniques. And so you may not see this image here at all, or you may just see the alternate text that says, image missing. So what's great about this is we've got some nice meaty text up here below, and then this infographic that highlights that. So I thought this was a great way to include multiple types of content. Oh, yes, Melissa, that's a great comment. It would read very well on mobile as well, and that's a good point, because that's something we need to think about with email these days, is not just looking at it on the computer, but if you're looking at it on a much smaller screen, you can see it does translate extremely well to a mobile size screen as well. So yeah, so that's something to consider. So like I said, I think this is a great mix of some good text as well as a really interesting image that highlights what's in the text. So this is your meat here, but if you've got it turned off, you're still going to get some info. And then I love what they did below with these testimonial quotes. I think that is a really great use. I mean, it's just a slight little extra bit of content at the bottom, but a really nice use of including some testimonials at the bottom. So really a good use of content here. Some information that's going to educate me, a graphic that's going to take that education to the next level and engage me further, and then some testimonial quotes that, again, is going to take that engagement a little bit deeper, but nothing that I couldn't scroll through this and read my email in, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It's just part of my normal email. So what we're looking at here is another, at the bottom of the email is another key piece of the email besides the body itself, and this is the sort of required by legal where you can opt out, easily opt out for an email. So the unsubscribe links, those are key. Most email services are going to include this, as well as you do have to include an address in every email. So if I did want to write a complaint letter, I would be able to do that. Again, most email services like Constant Contact or MailChimp are going to include this for you, but just good to know that you should always look for and see this when you're looking at an email program. The other thing that I really like that this email includes that you don't always see, but I think is really helpful, is this view online. And what that's for is if I am in my email reader and for some reason these images don't come through, or it comes through garbled, because that happens. That is the trick with email newsletters, is that they don't always come through the way we intend them to. Having that link where I can easily find it to view it online is very helpful. It's also much easier to make a PDF, so if I wanted to save this for future reference or to print it, it's much easier to do from my web browser in some cases than from my email program. So that view online is a very helpful way to do that. So that's a kind of a must to include somewhere in there. I see that left off a lot, especially in constant contact emails, and I find that really frustrating because there are just instances where it's nice to be able to view it online, do a PDF, print it, that sort of thing. So that, in a nutshell, is what makes a good email in terms of you've got your correct header content, you've got that interesting subject line, you've got your intro stuff, so your logo, your brand identity, you've got good content in here that's engaging and quick to read, as well as all your important legal footer information, again, links to your social media repeated down there.